60,000 years ago, the Earth was not dominated by a single kind of human being, but rather shared by multiple human species navigating a brutal, unpredictable world. It was a time defined by overlapping territories, unforgiving Ice Age climates, and a daily struggle to survive predators, scarcity, and the cold. And in the harsh landscapes of Ice Age Europe and Asia, two incredibly different yet strikingly similar species of humans finally crossed paths. They both stood upright, crafted tools from stone, and hunted with sharpened spears, but their differences ran far deeper than their shared appearance. One was Homo sapiens, the modern human species that had recently emerged from Africa, flexible, creative, and socially advanced. The other was the Neanderthal, a cold-weather specialist built for raw survival, deeply rooted in the Eurasian environment for hundreds of thousands of years. For many decades, the story was told simply that Neanderthals vanished because they were inferior and Homo sapiens prevailed due to superiority. But the truth is far messier, more brutal, and far more complex than a clean-cut tale of conquest or dominance. This wasn't just a case of one species replacing another. It was a prolonged and intense clash of intelligence, biology, endurance, and luck. To truly understand who dominated the ancient world, we need to go far back, before contact, before conflict, to when Neanderthals ruled Eurasia alone. These early humans had already been living in Europe and Western Asia for over 300,000 years, long before Homo sapiens ever stepped foot there. They had adapted over millennia to survive in brutal cold, face enormous predators, and carve out life in some of the world's harshest environments. Neanderthals were shorter and stockier than modern humans, with wide chests, muscular builds, and large nasal cavities for warming frozen air. Their bones were dense and strong, their bodies engineered for strength and endurance, ideal for ambush hunting and hand-to-hand struggles with prey. And while they were physically robust, they were also intellectually capable, crafting tools, using fire, and perhaps even burying their dead with care. Meanwhile, in Africa, a new kind of human had begun to rise, Homo sapiens, with longer limbs, narrower bodies, and minds built for adaptation and innovation. These humans were physically less bulky but cognitively more flexible, possessing the ability to learn, adapt, and communicate in more advanced ways. Rather than relying on brute strength, sapiens leaned into creativity, complex thought, and collaboration to thrive. Our species first emerged around 300,000 years ago in Africa, but we did not remain confined to that continent for long. By about 70,000 years ago, groups of Homo sapiens began migrating out of Africa, driven by environmental change, resource scarcity, and an innate urge to explore. As they spread into the Middle East, Europe, and Asia, they entered lands already occupied and ruled by Neanderthals. This migration was not a peaceful journey of discovery, but a high-stakes gamble for survival in unfamiliar, perilous territory. Sapiens moved in waves, adapting quickly to local ecosystems, using new technologies, and settling into regions where Neanderthals already lived. And everywhere they went, they encountered another human species, one that had mastered the land long before they arrived. The earliest encounters between Neanderthals and Homo sapiens have been lost to time, leaving only faint traces behind in bones and tools. We cannot say with certainty whether their first meetings were peaceful exchanges, cautious observations, or violent confrontations. But what we do know is that their contact, however it began, fundamentally altered the course of both species forever. Archaeological sites across Europe and the Middle East show evidence of Neanderthal tools and Homo sapiens tools occupying the same spaces, sometimes just decades apart. In some locations, Neanderthal artifacts are buried beneath layers of sapiens remains, suggesting quick, sudden replacements or slow transitions. In others, their presence appears side by side, hinting at shared regions, brief coexistence, or periods of mutual avoidance and competition. Despite common myths, sapiens did not instantly outmatch or eliminate the Neanderthals the moment they arrived. In fact, Neanderthals held their ground for thousands of years after first contact, adapting as best they could to the changing world around them. So the real question is, what gave Homo sapiens the long-term advantage in this drawn-out struggle? Much of it may come down to adaptability, resource use, and the cognitive differences between the two species. Neanderthals were incredibly effective hunters, often targeting large Ice Age megafauna like mammoths, woolly rhinoceroses, and reindeer. But this type of hunting was dangerous, energy-intensive, and heavily dependent on stable access to large game in known territories. Homo sapiens, in contrast, were more flexible in their diet and environment, able to survive on a wide range of foods including small animals, fish, plants, and insects. This flexibility allowed them to thrive in more diverse landscapes and withstand periods when food was scarce or unpredictable. They moved more often, changed strategies quickly, and adapted their behavior to suit the environment rather than being bound to one type of survival method. Another key advantage was in technology and the innovation of tools. Neanderthals used the Mousterian toolset, practical and refined, but largely unchanged over long periods. Sapiens brought newer technologies, long-range projectile weapons, composite tools, fishing hooks, bone needles, and even early musical instruments. They used these tools not just to hunt, but to sew clothes, build shelters, and navigate new terrain, including possibly crossing rivers or open water. These advances made Homo sapiens more mobile, more protected, and more efficient at survival than their heavier-set cousins. And technological innovation rarely happens without communication. One of the most important differences may have been the development of complex spoken language among Homo sapiens. Although Neanderthals vanished from the surface of the Earth nearly 40,000 years ago, they didn't completely disappear from the human story. Instead, a piece of them lives on in us, hidden in our cells, tucked inside our DNA, quietly influencing our health, behavior, and even how we think. Thanks to cutting-edge genetics, we've come to understand that Neanderthals were not our enemies or strangers. They became part of who we are. In 2010, scientists achieved something extraordinary when they fully sequenced the Neanderthal genome using fossil remains preserved in cold caves. What they found was a revelation. People of non-African ancestry carry between 1% and 2% Neanderthal DNA inherited through ancient interbreeding. This wasn't just a one-time occurrence. It happened repeatedly across different places and times. During the millennia, both species shared Eurasia. These discoveries shattered the old myth that Homo sapiens completely replaced Neanderthals through violent conquest or simple extinction. Instead, it became clear that we interbred with them, formed relationships, raised children, and left lasting genetic fingerprints that exist to this day. Rather than a story of dominance and erasure, the truth was one of blending, absorption, and survival through shared bloodlines. But what does it actually mean to have Neanderthal DNA within us? It's not just a curious fact. Their genes still shape our biology, subtly influencing the way our bodies and brains function today. From skin tone to sleep cycles, immunity to metabolism, their genetic legacy is alive and active inside modern humans. Some of the most influential Neanderthal genes relate to the immune system, helping our ancestors fight off dangerous pathogens in new environments. When Homo sapiens entered Eurasia, they encountered bacteria and viruses they had never faced before, and Neanderthal DNA helped them survive. Genes for stronger immune responses were passed down from Neanderthals, giving sapiens an evolutionary boost in this microbial battlefield. However, there's a double edge to this inheritance. These same immune system genes may also increase the risk of autoimmune diseases in modern people. In some populations, Neanderthal variants are linked to conditions like lupus, Crohn's disease, and allergies, where the body attacks itself. So while they offered protection in ancient times, they can cause complications in our modern, cleaner, less pathogen-filled world. Another surprising legacy is found in our skin and hair. Many of the genes that affect pigmentation and keratin production came from Neanderthals. These adaptations helped early sapiens survive in lower UV light regions of Europe and Asia by modifying melanin levels in skin and hair. Lighter skin tones, hair textures, and even red hair in some individuals have all been traced back to Neanderthal interbreeding. Neanderthal DNA has also been linked to how our bodies regulate sleep, especially in response to daylight and circadian rhythms. Living for thousands of years in regions with long, dark winters and brief summers, Neanderthals adapted to dramatic shifts in daylight exposure. Those same adaptations now influence modern human susceptibility to insomnia, depression, and even seasonal affective disorder. Some studies have even suggested that Neanderthal variants may affect pain sensitivity and mood regulation due to changes in nerve receptors. People with certain inherited Neanderthal genes have been shown to experience pain differently, sometimes more intensely than others. There are also associations between Neanderthal DNA and modern conditions like anxiety, addiction, and attention disorders. However, it's important not to think of Neanderthal DNA as purely bad or good. Evolution doesn't work with simple labels like that. Each gene variant was once useful in a particular environment, and its impact depends on the context in which it's expressed. What helped a Neanderthal survive? Freezing ice age. Europe might complicate modern life in a climate-controlled, sedentary society. There's also evidence that Neanderthal DNA played a role in how humans respond to COVID-19, for better and for worse. A stretch of Neanderthal DNA on chromosome 3 has been linked to severe reactions to the virus, especially in some European and South Asian populations. Yet other Neanderthal variants on chromosome 12 have been linked to protection against severe outcomes from COVID, showing their lingering biological power. Interestingly, Neanderthal DNA may even affect our fertility and reproduction, influencing both risks and advantages in this deeply human arena. Some Neanderthal variants are associated with lower sperm motility or increased miscarriage risk, while others appear to help with placental function. This suggests that the ancient interbreeding not only shaped our physical traits, but affected our very ability to create the next generation. The influence doesn't stop with biology. It may stretch into cognition, emotion, and behavior, though these links are still hotly debated. Some researchers believe Neanderthal variants influence neurological pathways that affect risk-taking, decision-making, and even empathy. This doesn't mean Neanderthals were less intelligent. It means their brains worked differently, and their traits still echo in ours. What we often forget is that Neanderthals were not mindless brutes, as once portrayed, but sensitive, social beings with rich emotional lives. They cared for injured group members, buried their dead, and may have used symbolic objects or even music based on fruits found in caves. These were not creatures. They were people with memories, fears, relationships, and perhaps even stories we will never hear. By discovering their DNA inside ourselves, we've opened a door not just to science, but to empathy, to understanding Neanderthals as relatives, not rivals. They are not extinct in the truest sense, because extinction means total disappearance, and that is not what happened here. Instead, they merged with us, their legacy absorbed into our expanding species as we spread across the globe. The story of Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, then, is not a clean-cut tale of us versus them. It's a braided narrative, two species converging, interacting, loving, fighting, and ultimately blending into a shared human future. Their bones may be buried deep in caves, but their fingerprints are still in our blood, shaping us in subtle, powerful ways. And the more we learn, the more we realize that we did not conquer Neanderthals, we became them, in part. They live on in our genetics, our immune systems, our sleep cycles, our pain thresholds, and possibly even in our minds. Each of us carries within us a small but profound inheritance from these ancient cousins of ours. This changes the way we view human evolution, not as a ladder with one winner at the top, but as a network of intertwined paths. We are not the only successful species, we are the only surviving one, but not without help, not without merging, and not without sacrifice. The genes we inherited from Neanderthals are like echoes. They don't scream, but they whisper in the background of everything we are. It also challenges our ideas of identity and purity, because there is no such thing as a pure Homo sapiens. We are hybrids, mosaics, the product of ancient mixtures that defy borders, labels, and simple origins. Our species is not defined by its isolation, but by its openness to change, to blend, to adapt through union. As science continues to unlock the secrets of our shared past, we're beginning to see Homo sapiens and Neanderthals as part of the same story. Not rivals on a battlefield, but relatives who met, learned from each other, and became something new together. And that shared legacy, genetic, emotional, evolutionary, is what makes our history truly human. So when we ask who dominated the ancient world, we must also ask, what if the answer is more complicated than victory or defeat? What if the Neanderthals changed us not by being defeated, but by becoming part of us, influencing our destiny from within? As we'll see in part 3, their disappearance was not just a biological event, it was a cultural, environmental,